dawn of the Industrial Revolution, Western society is primarily agricultural and commercial. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is 270 parts per million. And then, factories spring up across the countryside and industrial towns grow around them. We begin to burn fossil fuels in large quantities, and then burn more. The carbon dioxide level of the air rises. The level rises again, then again. The 1950s. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the air is 315 parts per million. Still more fossil fuels are burned. More and more carbon dioxide is emitted into the atmosphere.
No one can dispute that carbon dioxide levels are rising. This is a plot of the monthly readings of atmospheric CO2 concentrations measured at Mauna Loa, Hawaii, between 1957 and 1996. During this period, carbon dioxide has increased each year. The curve has a sawtooth appearance because of seasonal fluctuations in CO2. During the growing season, plants consume large amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Much of this is returned to the atmosphere during their dormant season. Concentrations of atmospheric CO2 before 1957 have been determined by measuring carbon dioxide trapped in ice cores in the Greenland Glacier. These core readings indicate a carbon dioxide level of about 280 parts per million from 1750 to 1800. This is followed by a steady rise to present levels. The rise corresponds with the increase in man's industrial activity. This rise in carbon dioxide levels in the Earth's atmosphere is at the heart of the global warming debate. Environmentalists claim the rise is directly responsible for global warming, but geological data and temperature records do not support their argument. A faulty resolution of this issue may carry severe consequences. The theory of global warming began in the 1980s when a group of scientists designed a computer to predict climate change. In one experiment, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was theoretically doubled. The results indicated a warming of the Earth's average atmospheric temperature by approximately 4 degrees Celsius or 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Stephen Snyder published a paper in the same year which predicted disasters from this warming, such as melting of the ice caps, rising sea levels, flooding of low-lying coastal areas, even the flooding of Washington, D.C. To quote Steve Snyder, "We have to offer up scary scenarios, make simplified, dramatic statements, and make little mention of any doubts we might have. Each of us has to decide what is the balance between being effective and being honest."
I probably share the puzzlement of a lot of people in trying to understand why modest warming is treated as one of the gravest dangers facing mankind. I simply do not know why. I do know what I have seen, as have most other people on television, you know, pictures of palm trees in Boston, Washington underwater. And those indeed are part of what I suppose one could call a cataclysmic scenario. But to the best of my knowledge, they have nothing to do with what any scientist has predicted, regardless of which side of the issue he is on.
When the predicted warming of the 1990s did not develop and improved climate models predicted less and less global warming, the rhetoric shifted from global warming to climate change. As Professor Patrick Michaels of the University of Virginia pointed out, calling it climate change instead of global warming means that if it's hotter than normal, colder than normal, wetter than normal, drier than normal, more normal than normal, or more abnormal than normal, we can assume we had something to do with it. The principal flaw of the global warming theory is a short period of time on which the data is based. Geologists have long recognized that the Earth's climate has changed dramatically over time in response to natural variations. A very accurate ancient temperature record has been established by measuring oxygen isotope ratios trapped in microfossils. Utilizing more data from the deep sea drilling program, this represents the relative changes in the climate during the last 3 million years. The time scale is across the bottom. Each tick represents 100,000 years. The numbers 1, 2, and 3 indicate millions of years before the present. Warmer temperatures are in the upward spikes shaded in yellow, and the downward spikes indicate colder temperatures. The blue shading indicates glacial periods. You can see that the first glaciers are indicated to have begun some 2 million years ago, when the Arctic ice cap formed. Glaciation has intensified during the last 900,000 years. The warm periods were dominant before 2 million years ago. In fact, as we go further back in time, isotope records indicate the Earth's climate was progressively warmer for at least 140 million years. 140 million years ago, the polar regions were about as warm as the United States is today. There were no polar ice caps, no freezing winters then. The world's land areas were covered by lush tropical vegetation, which supported huge herds of dinosaurs. But now let's go back to the 3 million year graph. As we approach the present, the warm periods have become fewer and of shorter duration. The very narrow yellow band at the right end indicates the Earth's present warm period. Does that look like it was caused by any different process in those earlier warm periods? To the left is a warm period of 135,000 years ago, which lasted some 25,000 years. Following this in blue is the most recent glacial age, lasting approximately 100,000 years. Global warming advocates are using the temperature changes of this 150,000 year period in conjunction with CO2 levels from ice cores to support their claim that carbon dioxide increase is driving atmospheric temperatures to higher levels. President Clinton is furnishing members of Congress a publication entitled Our Changing Planet as a supplement to his 1998 budget. This is figure 3 from President Clinton's budget supplement. It's the same 150,000 year period, but with a lot of clutter added and 2 time scales. Could it be that these are an attempt to hide something? This is a revision of the figure with all the information plotted to the same scale, and the unnecessary, confusing items are removed. Atmospheric temperature is shown in red and atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations in blue. Early data was derived from ice cores taken from the Vostok station in Antarctica, and the recent data from actual measurements. This earlier warm period occurred 135,000 years ago. Temperatures then sharply declined, causing a glacial age which lasted 100,000 years. This was followed by the most recent warm period, which began 13,000 years ago. The caption accompanying this chart in the budget supplement states, observations suggest a close linkage between the carbon dioxide concentrations and temperature, with rising CO2 contributing to rising temperatures. This looks pretty convincing. The red temperature curve generally parallels the blue CO2 curve. But do rises in atmospheric CO2 level cause rising temperatures, or does the rise in temperature cause the increase in the CO2 level? There are 50 times as much CO2 in the oceans as in the atmosphere. The ocean surfaces continually absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The amount of CO2 which can be absorbed in water is determined by the partial pressure of CO2 in the atmosphere and the water's temperature, known as Henry's law.